I had filed 712 survey reports in my 12 years with the Caliper Thermal Survey Compact, and in none of them had I been required to enter the phrase, operating principle, unrecorded. I wrote it twice in the report I filed after the Proving Grounds incident. The archive query is still running. The human, Aldrich Van, had come to us as part of a 4-species joint survey compact, his credentials listing 18 years in subsurface geological work on 3 worlds. The compact's intake assessors had logged his equipment inventory on arrival, and most of it matched the standard classifications without difficulty. Pressure gauges, core sample tubes, a portable spectrometer, survey tape. The one item that did not match was a steel measuring caliper, 15 centimeters, spring-loaded jaw. The upper arm cracked along the inner curve where the tension spring had apparently been over-tightened at some point and never replaced. The intake assessor had logged it under survey equipment, general, handheld, unclassified, and moved on. I had looked at it in Van's kit pouch during the orientation briefing and thought it was a worn tool that he hadn't gotten around to replacing. He carried it loose in the left outer pocket of his field vest. It clinked against a tube of core labels when he moved. I thought nothing further about it. The Caliper Proving Grounds occupy a 40-kilometer basalt shelf on the southern edge of the Caliper thermal zone, where the subsurface pressure gradients run close enough to the surface that survey work can be done on foot rather than by bore probe. The shelf's geology is well mapped. Our distributed seismic array runs 1,000 sensor nodes across the shelf, feeding continuous pressure gradient data to a central averaging model that produces a consensus reading updated every 90 seconds. The nodes are calibrated to a tolerance of 0.03 kilopascals. The averaging model has been in continuous operation for 11 years and has never returned a false positive. On the morning Van and I were running the eastern grid, the model had been returning a stable reading for 6 consecutive hours. Consensus, nominal, no anomaly. The averaging was clean across all 1,000 nodes, the variance within the expected range. The gradient curves flat and predictable in the way that means a shelf is quiet and intends to remain so. I was watching my own display tablet when I first noticed Van had stopped moving. He was at grid position 7 on the Keth cross line, approximately 80 meters ahead of me, crouched with one knee on the basalt. The caliper was in his right hand, jaw open, the lower arm laid flat along a hairline seam in the surface rock. He was not reading anything from it in the way I would have understood reading. There was no display, no indicator, no sensor output. He was holding the fork of the tool between his thumb and his first 2 fingers, the cracked upper arm resting loose against the pad of his thumb, and he was completely still. I walked toward him. He did not look up when I reached him. His eyes were tracking along the seam, but his attention was not in his eyes. It was, as best I could determine, in his thumb. "Van," I said. "Give me a minute," he said. I waited. 30 meters to the north, 2 of our other surveyors were moving steadily along the grid with their probe units, the readings feeding into the model in real time. The shelf was warm underfoot and bright overhead. The twin stars of the Caliper system at local noon, no cloud cover, the kind of light that makes everything look like a stable surface. The array's 90-second update cycled, consensus, nominal. He ran the caliper jaw 2 centimeters farther along the seam, resettled his grip, and held still again. Then he said, "Your array is wrong." I told him the array was reading nominal, across all 1,000 nodes, and that the variance was well within standard parameters. "I know what your array says," he said. "There's a pressure channel below this seam, 45 meters. It's been building." He lifted the caliper and looked at the cracked upper arm, not at me. The crack resonates at a specific frequency when the jaw sits over a shear gradient above a pressurized void. It's not a reading I can give you a number for. It's a feeling in the thumb. The frequency changes when the void is active. There's a difference between rock sitting still and rock that's being pushed from below, and the crack knows it before the sensors catch up. I asked him how a crack in a measuring tool could detect a subsurface pressure channel that 1,000 calibrated sensor nodes running continuous averaged gradient analysis had not detected. He thought about this for a moment. "The nodes average," he said. "A diffuse channel under 40 meters of fractured basalt shows up in the gradient curve as background variation. Your model smooths it. The model is designed to smooth it. That's what averaging is for. The crack doesn't smooth anything. It just vibrates." He looked back at the seam. "I've felt this 3 times before on different worlds. Different tool, same technique. Twice the ground opened inside an hour. 3rd time it took 4. The frequency was the same." I looked at my tablet. The array's next update was cycling. Consensus, nominal. The gradient curve was flat. I told him that the array was our primary instrument and that I could not initiate an evacuation protocol on the basis of a feeling transmitted through a crack in a steel measuring tool. He looked at me for the first time since I had reached him. He had the kind of face that does not perform urgency, which made the quiet in his expression harder to read than alarm would have been. He said, "I understand that. I'm not asking you to. I'm telling you what I'm reading so that when the vent opens you'll have a record of it." He paused. "But if you want my honest professional assessment, I'd start moving the team off the eastern grid." We stood there for 4 seconds. I have counted them back many times in the months since. The array updated. Consensus. Nominal. I called the evacuation. I don't know exactly why I did it. I had been a field surveyor for 12 years and I had never called an evacuation on a stable reading. The procedure manual has no clause for calling one on somatic instrument data from an unclassified tool. The Archives Incident Review Board asked me the same question 3 times during the formal inquiry and I gave them the same answer each time, which was that Van had held still for a long time, and that his attention had been in his thumb in a way I did not have a classification for, and that I had found I trusted it. The team was 90 meters clear of the eastern grid when the shelf at position 7 on the Keth crossline vented. It was not a catastrophic event. The channel was pressurized but narrow, 42 meters below the surface, as Van had said. Running at a gradient our array had classified as background variation for the full 6 hours we had been on the shelf. The vent opened along the hairline seam, released over 11 minutes, and closed. The sensor nodes in a 12-meter radius of the vent were destroyed. The basalt shelf cracked to a depth of 9 meters along the seam. No one was injured. Van's caliper was still lying on the seam at grid position 7 when the vent opened. It was gone when the venting stopped. I spent 3 days writing the anomaly detection report. The Incident Review Board required a formal record of the detection method, which is standard procedure. The difficulty was that there was no operating principle I could enter. I asked Vanny to describe the technique in terms the archive could classify, and he did his best, which produced the following: hairline crack, upper arm, internal curve, spring tension still present. At specific subsurface pressure frequency gradients, the crack resonates against the ball of the thumb at a frequency inconsistent with inert rock. No calibration value. No reproducible numeric threshold. 18 years of accumulated comparison is the calibration. He had looked at the form when he said this and added, without any apparent sense that he was complicating my filing situation, "You'd need the same caliper and about 15 years of practice." I don't know how to teach the 15 years. I entered. Instrument. Field caliper. Steel. Handheld. Cracked upper arm. Spring-loaded jaw. Provenance. Human. Manufacturer. Unrecorded. Operating principle. Unrecorded. Detection result. Positive anomaly. Subsurface pressure channel. 42 meters. Grid 7 Keth. Outcome. Evacuation completed. 0 casualties. Vent confirmed 11 minutes post-detection. Classification. Survey equipment. General. Handheld. Unclassified. Result. Sufficient. The archive query triggered by operating principle, unrecorded, filed alongside a confirmed positive anomaly detection, has been running for 4 months. I am told it may run considerably longer. Vanny requisitioned a replacement caliper from our equipment stores before he left the grounds. He looked at it for a moment when it arrived, a new one, upper arm intact, spring tension correct, and then he put it in his kit pouch and zipped it shut. He has not said anything further about it. I did not ask. Some instruments take 15 years to crack in exactly the right place, and I suspect he knows that better than I do.